welcome to Central Florida Salute YouTube. I'm your host, Bob Peters, once again at the Eagles Area 4273 in beautiful Oklahoma, Florida. And I have a very special guest today because it's a very special program. It's all about welcome home. My guest today is Jeff Hester. He served in the United States Navy Reserve as a CB, right, Jeff?
CB, yep, CE2.
CE2. And Jeff is here to talk about a homecoming that happened the other day. And I'll let you talk about who it was for, and it was your uncle, but tell us about the homecoming.
I'll do that. I can start and give you a little bit of information about Franklin. Franklin P. Hall, the middle name you don't ever hear is Pierce, because that's a whole nother branch of that family going back.
Yeah, because this is all your family we're talking about.
Yes, on my mother's side. And believe me, when you start mixing it all up and start trying to do a little genealogy, you find out how old you are and how hard it is to do. But he was born in the Leesburg, Lake County, Sumter County area right in there, and grew up in Leesburg, went to Leesburg High School. He had my mother, of course, as a sister, and then he had two other brothers, Milton and Robert. And a little point of interest, both of those guys are in service too. Robert was very young, so he was later on involved in I think the Army Air Corps also. But Milton was in the Army and was a Purple Heart recipient also.
Yeah, the Army. It was called the Army Air Corps, but in 1947, that's when it officially became the Air Force.
It did, yeah. Because I've had several questions. Well, he was in the Air Force then, wasn't he? I said, no, I hadn't quite got there yet. It was the Army Air Corps. And I think in 1 year after he passed, it did become the Air Force.
1947, it became Air Force.
Somewhere along in there, it did. All righty, and I can tell you that probably right out of high school in 1941, he went to Camp Blanding, Florida, up near Stark, and entered the service there. He enlisted and went to basic training and everything there. And from there on, it's pretty much a lot of evolution throughout the military as to getting into units and things like that. But to start with the story, actually, as to what happened, he ended up in the European theater. He flew out of England on a bombing mission, flew over the northern part of France, and the objective was a V-1 missile site. That was becoming a very big threat, really problematic, and the Americans were putting on a big push. And he was in a group of 28 planes, B-24 Liberators. His plane was the Queen Marlene, and he was the left waist gunner in that plane. And it was the 66th Bombardment Squadron, 44th Bombardment Group, Heavy, and that's the outfit he was with. So they made a successful bombing run from the records I got, and they were exiting the northern part of France, headed back toward England, when they were set upon by a group of Focke-Wulf 190 German fighters. That was the latest and the greatest fighter at that time in the war. Pretty well advanced, pretty lethal. And as they were being attacked, the plane went into a wing over, spinning down. The only person to get out of that group of 10, there's a crew of 10 on those planes, the only one to get out was the tail gunner. He managed to get out. He did not know really the extent of the damage. He just knew that it was going and going down, and it was over. The extent of the damage seemed to be that it strafed the pilot and co-pilot. But he was in a chute, and then that afforded him the ability to tell the story. And he was the only one, if you'll notice right there, he's the only one that survived. His name was Richard A. Mayhew. And went down in the chute, and then he watched the plane impact and burn. And as far as where they went down, the Equans, France, I'm very sorry about not being able to pronounce that very well, but I talked to a French lady that couldn't pronounce it either, so I don't feel so bad now.
It is difficult. So I've been over to Europe and into France, and I've been to some of the cemeteries there where a lot of our men and women in military are buried over there. From what I understand, some of them, they could go home, and others just they buried in the cemeteries overseas. It was up to the family's discretion whether they wanted to bring him home or not. But he was, they didn't know exactly where he was, right?
True. The plane went down, a very horrific crash, according to the latest information and results on DNA and investigation, archaeological forensics and all that stuff. It was a bad crash and a bad burn. The German soldiers were immediately on the scene and accumulated what remains they could. Some of the articles I've read and some of the research I've read was to the fact that even though we're talking Nazis here, there was a part of the German army and people around that were very much into showing dignity to the remains of soldiers. They accumulated these remains at Equans and transported them about 43 kilometers north to a little town called Puy. Now, there's more to that name too, but we're not going to try to pronounce that either.
Nope.
And they were interred at that point in a grave, but it was marked but unmarked. So they knew there was a grave there. They knew and documented that there was American soldiers there, but they didn't know who or even what accident because we're looking miles away. And they kept pretty good records, the Germans did. And later on, over the years following the war, trying to investigate where the planes went down, recovering wreckage, recovering bodies, recovering whatever they could to determine, return of the soldiers or the servicemen. They ran into so many block walls. There's a lot of writing on that, and it goes to different committees on what they did and the timeline they did it. But it's hard to just bring all those facts out. But they tried very hard. And in 1951, they notified my mother and the family that he was unrecoverable. They had gone as far as forensics, as far as archaeology, as far as what they could do in science. He was going to no longer be. It was over. So that went on for years and years and years and years. And at some point, 2015, something like that, we started getting notifications in the family that they had been more committee discussions. There was better science, better understanding of where the crashes went on, and in the understanding of more and more documentation as to where actually remains were placed. So, with that being said, it was interesting. And then in 2017 or 2018, I got a call, and my brother got a call, that they had decided, and let me back up a minute here, because on these meetings, they had decided the importance of some of these crashes and determined what they could find and what they couldn't. They went back to Puy, uninterred the bones that were there, took them to Normandy, and placed them again in graves marked X. They didn't know what they were, but they got them on Normandy because they knew they were Americans. And through these meetings and decisions, they decided to go back and start working on them. And the science at that time, in like 2018, was DNA was on the ball.
So thank goodness.
Yes, thank goodness. And my brother and I provided a swab from each of us, and it was accepted by the Army. And in the Department of, let me get this, I want to read it so I don't mess it up. Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. That's a mouthful, but that's what, and they're tremendous. They work hard, they're efficient, they're thorough, and they're polite and nice. And I'm saying that because any question you got, any doubt, they can explain it. They'll take. It's just great. They do a great job. So at that point, we knew, well, okay, we might be in for something here. This is pretty cool. And it didn't take long that started receiving calls of where they were getting with it and everything. And of course, prior to this, we also received meetings and calls about where they were at looking and discovering. We never were left out of the loop. It was quite amazing. They were very efficient.
Sounds like it.
They were great. And in July of 1923, I got a call that Uncle Franklin had been found and verified. And would I be the family director? I was the next in line, next to kin. Would I agree? And I said, yeah, I sure would. I said, absolutely. We got a veteran family. We know what it's about. So, with that being said, it really got going better. And the Department of Defense, and then the Army got in there and supplied a casualty officer. The Department of Defense was a retired Air Force Major, Michael Mee, absolutely fantastic guy that was so professional, so good at this stuff. It was just amazing. And the officer from the Army was Master Sergeant Mark Zapata. They came to my house, and I'm thinking, okay, we're going to have a little meeting and see how it goes and all that. Well, it was just the opposite of that. It was amazing. It was all day. All day. That's how much information they had. It was all day information. And from there, it was just gathering information. For me and what we needed to do and what we wanted to do as a family and what was available to us through the Department of Defense and the Army. And we just, I told him right then, I said, no, he's a veteran. No, we need all the recognition he can get, all the honor he can get.
Absolutely.
So let's do it to it. I mean, I think I turned around and told them, let's get him out there, and their eyes kind of got bright. I said, all right, this is good. So that's where we're at. It was quite interesting.
Now, I was talking to you a little bit before about, you think about the MIA POW flag, which a lot of people think the kids nowadays said Mia Pow, but it's missing in action, prisoner of war, to bring the remains home. And this is 80 years later that you're bringing this gentleman back to Leesburg, and that your family is from here, right?
They are, yeah. My mother's and my father's families are multi-generational, right from this area here. So it was quite an honor to do that too. And you got to know this. Now, look, this happened in 1944. I'm thinking, okay, I'm 70 years old. Math's not working right here.
Yeah.
He was gone. He was gone. This is over. Messed around with almost 10 years before I was even born. So here it is. I'm 70 years old. He would be old as dirt, like almost 100, and we're getting this done. So
finally coming home.
Yep. Nobody needs to have a doubt in the world that they can't get it done. The technology is amazing. And, I've got I told you they kept me in touch with things. They kept me in touch with flyers and timelines and different accountings of what was going on. It was a pictograph. It was just great. And then where he came from and how it's done and how the different forensics and things are taking place in what they do. It's just through the roof. They really do a good job.
I asked you a question before, and you told me, but it may not quite be accurate, about how many are not accounted for, or they're working on to bring home.
Oh, true. I'm not sure. In a lot of these, some of the latest documents, there were less, close to 100,000. It was a lot.
Yeah, and
they're working on, and I know that I saw in the news lately where they were actually in Vietnam, over there working with the difficulties of the terrain and the environment and everything along those lines, trying to really work to get more closure on that sort of thing.
That being a Vietnam veteran, I know 1971 is when the MIA POW flag officially got approval by the Congress, and I think a lot of that really kind of had a lot to do with Vietnam veterans. But any man or woman who served our country should be brought home if they want, if it's at all possible. I'm so happy for you and your family that Franklin came home, and we're going to show a little bit of film right now with some of the ceremony.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but we're also going to show, and you'll see this later, I guess. Lone Oak Cemetery and the history of Lone Oak Cemetery.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Hello and welcome to Central Florida Salute YouTube. As I said in the beginning, we're here on a very special occasion. getting ready for remains to be brought here. We're going to cover some, but we're also going to go inside the museum office and learn about the history of Lone Oak Cemetery. There's a lot of history here. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Okay, I'm now inside the office of Lone Oak Cemetery here in Leesburg. This is a very special day. You want to talk about the day a little bit, and then I'd like you to give me a little history of Lone Oak, because I know there's quite a bit of history here.
Right. Well, today we are welcoming home a Staff Sargent, Franklin Hall, who was just discovered in France, in Normandy. And as a matter of fact, he is related to one of the founding members of Leesburg. So that would be the Robertson family. So they were here, actually they were the first ones here. And they were friends with Evander Lee, who, that's where we get the name of Leesburg from, is Evander Lee. So Sergeant Hall was shot down in a bomber in 1944 on January 21st at 3 p.m., which is the same time and date that we are burying him.
80 years later.
80 years later,
Isn't
so
that amazing?
It's wonderful to bring him back home where he needs to be.
Yeah, you know, when I look at the MIA POW flag, you and I know what it means, but a lot of kids don't know what that means. You know,
No.
missing in action prisoners of war. And to have someone come home to their final resting spot, especially in their old hometown, it's truly heartwarming to me.
Yes, and he's going to be buried right next to his grandparents.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll be out there looking at the site in a little bit. But like I said before, I've been here several times with the Wreaths Across America, and I know there's history here.
Right.
And I know something had to do with a dog and
Right.
a lot of other stuff.
Well,
And that's why you're here, my dear, to give us the history.
Well, we were established in 1867. Our first burial was then. And we have many of the founding fathers, many of the founding families buried here. Notable is Annie Oakley's gunsmith. He's buried here. And you did mention a dog. Well, Annie Oakley had a dog named Dave, and he was tragically hit up there on Main Street in 1924. And Annie wanted so much for him to be buried here in Lone Oak Cemetery, but the powers that be would not allow it. So she and Frank, her husband, walked out in the woods and buried him in a makeshift grave. They made a marker. It looks like what she did was she just had some cement and she drew his name with a stick in it. And 70 years later, we found the marker.
Oh, really?
Somebody had moved to that property and it had been developed. We found the marker but did not find his remains. And we just acquired the marker last year, and there's a marquee up here in Pet Cemetery.
Yeah, I know down that end of the cemetery.
Yeah, that
is a
shows
pet.
it's got the original marker, but Southern Monument here in town made a beautiful memorial to them, and her picture and his picture is there.
I'll have to go over and take a look.
Yeah, you'll have to. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, we're going to have quite a crowd here today. I
Yeah,
guess.
I'm expecting a couple hundred, if not more.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have 150 bikes in the procession alone. The Corvette Club is coming. Fire department will be here. First responders. You know, all my veterans that come are supposed to be here lining the roads as he comes in. So.
Yeah, the Patriot Guard, I'm sure.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
they're tremendous. They're
Yeah.
So yeah, we're looking forward to it. Like I said outside, which I tell you, I'm doing this interview with you to get an idea about Lone Oak Cemetery and what's here. And any of the people that the world might know that are buried here? I mean, mostly local heroes, right?
Local heroes, Evander Lee, who Leesburg was named after, the Robertson family, the Ward family, they all came here before it was even Leesburg. So, and then William Giddens, he is the gunsmith for Annie Oakley.
And this cemetery, it is a not-for-profit, am I
Not-for-profit.
and there's a committee, if I remember right.
We have 9 board members, trustees that govern everything. And so all we get are donations. You know, we sell plots, but mostly we run on donations from the community, and they're very good to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will thank you for this interview. I'm going to go right around a little bit and check out. I'm going to go look for that site where the dog was.
Right up here at Pet Cemetery.
Yeah, right, sure.
Okay, well, I got a driver over here, by the way.
Yeah, I heard. You recruited him.
He's going to take me around.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you for the interview.
Thank you so much, Bob,
And
as always.
it's going to be quite the day.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yep. Yeah, I'd like you to tell me a little bit about how this all, the service all came about. And there were hundreds of people there, a couple hundred people, I would think.
Yeah, closer to 5.
Yeah, closer to
It
5.
was a lot.
And a lot of motorcycles.
160. I got that number. It's 168 motorcycles.
Okay.
I don't want to speak for the DOD on this other stuff, but it was the motorcycles were. But I think Tony Byers told me 168, and the whole thing getting choreographed was phenomenal. Now, it goes all right. It goes past and before Lone Oak Cemetery actually. Tracy Metcalf was fantastic in getting this thing built, set up, worked on within the cemetery. The cemetery is one of the best looking cemeteries ever to do this. And I might say, well, let me do this. Let me go back to where we got Franklin. I didn't cover that yet.
Okay.
It's kind of like in between where we talked about how things were handled, and he was found and verified, and we had a meeting and things were set up. Well, okay, you got to get his bones back. I'm sorry, his remains.
Yes, that's a better way of putting it.
It is a better way. And his remains were flown in on December the 15th on Southwest Airlines, and they were flown in to Orlando International. And through the help of Byers and Lake County Sheriff's Department and Southwest, that plane came in. And it was bad weather, too. It was bad weather, but as soon as that plane touched the ground, the weather cleared up. Amazing.
Yeah.
The plane taxied. The fire trucks at the airport had formed a water cannon. And they fired the water cannon over the jet as it taxied.
Yeah,
Absolutely amazing. The honor guard, and it was such an intricate thing that they do there. And of course, Master Sergeant Zapata was covering and making sure every single thing went perfect. And Roger Byers and Tony Byers' funeral home, making sure everything was received perfect. And the Army had a soldier in utilities there, and I'm thinking, well, that's kind of unusual. I'm looking at all this honor guard and the escorting officer. Everybody's in full dress, and I'm thinking, there's a guy in utilities. That guy got in that airplane and handled undoing the remains for the casket and everything, and securing it and securing the flag, which you couldn't do in a dress uniform. It was impossible.
Yeah.
But he worked like a dog up there. It was the craziest thing you've ever seen, and got that going and got that casket out lined up, and the honor guard took it, and it was just really, really a great job. And then the sheriff's department escorted us back to the Lady Lake Byers office.
Yeah,
With
Sheriff
the-
Peyton Grinnell does a lot. He served in the United States Marine Corps in Vietnam. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that, but I wouldn't doubt it a bit.
Peyton is quite the guy, and he also organized. We have 2 people here who are members that are Gold Star parents, and when their son came home, they took care of it. It's great to see something like that, and it's well appreciated and well deserved.
It's just, it was a beautiful deal. Now I got to tell you this too: the 3 pilots, and I think one of them might have been a transfer pilot or transport. However, there was 3. I'm not sure. Maybe that aircraft requires 3, but they were all veterans. They had covered with everyone on that airplane what was going on. And those people were glued to the windows. It was unbelievable. And the people in the terminal looking out. We were down on the tarmac. I've never really been in any kind of official capacity on the tarmac outside one of those running airplanes. It's a very overwhelming. I mean, you're overwhelmed emotionally, and you're overwhelmed with just everything that's going on around you to keep it organized. Hard to believe, but all right. Simply put, Americans get it.
Yeah, yeah.
So that got him back to Lady Lake, and very honorably. The escort officer, I believe his name was Haskell, Sergeant Haskell, sharp, stayed with Franklin every instant, checked everything every instant. There was nothing left to chance, nothing left to be disrespected or anything. They did a fantastic job. And that's where we got him back there. And then the next came the planning and the what the Army and the Defense Agency did as far as setting up the actual honor funeral, military honor funeral.
Yeah, it was quite the event, you know, and the motorcycle escort all through town. It was really something, and it's well deserved. I know you wanted to give a shout out to the guy who painted the top of the casket.
I did. That was a type of applique that we wanted. Like I told you, we wanted to do everything we could to honor Franklin and to honor veterans everywhere. So it needed to look good. Well, Larry at the vault company right down here, and I apologize because I can't remember his last name and I can't remember the vault company's name, but right here in Okahumpka.
You know he's a member here of the Eagles.
I do know he's a member here.
He's actually a trustee.
Well,
here.
there you go.
He does a great job, and it was a beautiful job they did on the top of that
Absolutely.
casket.
When I was coming over here to talk to you and do this, I pulled my little Jeep in there and I got out and I said, this isn't a card sending thing. This is a stopping and telling you thing. So I thanked him right then. It was a fantastic
Larry
job he did on it.
Call's his last name.
Larry Call.
Tell me about how it all started and how it came down, everything.
Well, the first thing that happened, it was just me sitting there like a babbling idiot, just with everything, opportunities we had, and with the Army casualty group being in full, and the Defense Department over here, okay, we need to do this. And then Roger Byers with Byers Funeral Home was just, let's make this right. And Tony Camus with Byers, Senior Director, he's got more knowledge in how to set up one of these military funerals than you can shake a stick at. And he started working on this thing and got it so right. From the motorcade, the processional, it lasted. I swear to my goodness, that thing went from Lady Lake past Rootland Park before we could get out the driveway of the funeral home.
When Jeff described the whole story, and we invited him to come in, sat at this very table, he met with myself and Mr. Roger Byers, owner of Byers Funeral Home, and he was going through the story. I just got chill bumps, and I still get chill bumps today just talking about it. It is just such an incredible story.
Yeah, it is.
So we were honored with the privilege of repatriating him back to Leesburg, and it just was quite an event. Working with numerous agencies, including the Air Force National Guard here in Florida, which was able to provide our flyover for us.
That was awesome.
And two F-15s, low altitude with afterburners on when they came over. And they were precise because we had worked out the GPS coordinates a few days before the flyover. Mm-hmm. And it was just an amazing event. And I just feel very honored and privileged that we had the opportunity to repatriate Staff Sergeant Hall back to Leesburg.
That was quite the day, quite the ceremony. I was real touched too. I have interviewed Jeff already, you know.
But getting back to Staff Sergeant Hall, his story is such an incredible story, and Jeff wanted to honor him to the day that his airplane went down 80 years ago. Unfortunately, we were not able to do the original Welcome Home Heroes Highway from Orlando back to Leesburg because of the late arrival of the flight out of Nebraska. So we had to postpone that till the day that we buried Staff Sergeant Hall at Lone Oak Cemetery, and that's when we did the Welcome Home Heroes Highway from this location of Byers and Lady Lake down to Leesburg, down through downtown, and coming back to Lone Oak Cemetery. So that's why it was scheduled on that day. No, we just had everybody that I talked to was just incredibly impressed with the story. We had news coverage from all the local media, all the Orlando media. Just had a lot of exposure to honor him, and it was about him. Just like we did with Honor Flight, whenever we started Honor Flight, we always preached to our volunteers, it's not about us, it's about the veteran. And so our focus was on Staff Sergeant Hall to honor him in the best way we could. And I think we did a pretty good job.
I think you did a great job. Like I said, I was totally impressed. And I have been in the veterans community almost 40 years. And I have seen a lot. And but that really moved me that day. I got to be honest with you, it really moved me. And the history of that cemetery and the history of this man going off to war, and nobody knew what happened to him.
Yeah.
And then they discover who he is and where he is, and coming home to a hero's welcome that you guys arranged. Perfect. It couldn't have been couldn't have done it any better.
Well, we had great weather that day, so the weather cooperated with us, and we had 168 motorcycles in the escort, just the civilian motorcycles. That's not including the law enforcement motorcycles.
Yeah.
And we had about 15 cars from the Corvette Club here in the villages that escorted us as well. So, again, it was just, I think, a tremendous honor to honor him, and a tremendous privilege for us to be able to do that. Byers Funeral Homes, I just want to mention this, has a history of veteran service as well. Our second generation owner, Mr. Ivan Byers Jr., was a Navy World War II vet and served in the Pacific Theater. So we have that in our heritage as far as our funeral home operation. But I personally have taken on honoring veterans just because of what I do in funeral service. But when I saw the opportunity for Villages Honor Flight, it was like, here's an opportunity I get to honor veterans prior to their death. And then I also work with Cornerstone Hospice Foundation. I'm currently their chair. And
the one in
Tavares.
Yeah.
And we have a program called Veteran Salutes.
I know that program very well.
That we take care of. And George Wanberg, my friend, George used to head that up. I'm not sure who currently heads that up, but again, an opportunity to honor veterans before their death.
Yeah.
So
George and I are good friends too.
Good. George is a good guy.
Yeah.
It was absolutely amazing. And Clean Towing Service took two big tall crane wreckers and hung a cable across 441 with a huge American flag on it.
Really, I didn't see
They did.
that. Yeah.
And then when we got down there, Leesburg Fire Department had a giant flag hanging off a big giant ladder truck. It just overwhelming.
Yeah, I have some footage of that. We'll see that. It really, and Lone Oak Cemetery, like I said, is that was to me what was really it was good to me. It was like this guy was 19 years old when he took off, went to save the world. He lost his life, but he finally came home to his hometown, and Lone Oak Cemetery. As I said, the history there. This whole event was amazing to me.
Yeah, and we set it up a little bit ahead of time too. We actually had viewings. Now say, how would you do viewings of remains in a uniform? But we opted to say this is a powerful statement. We're going to do viewing of a uniform and explain the remains. So in Byers and Leesburg on Saturday, this past Saturday, we actually set up a viewing, and I had another casualty officer come in, or the Mark Zapata had another casualty officer come in, Melissa, and she was fantastic and did a great job. And I think her last name was Kasiki, and handled everybody so well and did so good. And we had a string of people coming through there for the whole middle part of the day, showing respects and everything. And if you think it won't get you choked up looking at veterans coming through, it was amazing. And then Sunday we did the same thing before the funeral.
Yeah,
So
and you
we
did it
have
too.
two viewings.
Yeah, one in Lady Lake and one in
And Leesburg.
Leesburg.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We wanted everybody to have the opportunity to pay respects. And everybody, I think, enjoyed those and did come to pay respects, and it was done. And Tony Camus did a real good job of putting up a storyboard and also a storyboard over here explaining how the uniform was set up for display and how the remains were set up and stored in the mattress of the casket. And there's just there's a lot of details that were handled so well and just really looked so good. And of course we had a bagpiper that played. I haven't even mentioned F-15 jets blowing the treetops
Oh,
out.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, yeah, they were something else. I think we're going to, unless you got something else you want to talk about, I think we're going to kind of like wrap this up. But before we wrap this up, I have a little something for you. So if my assistant will help me out, because I don't want to get up from here. You and I had a conversation.
Right.
And I told you about a poem I wrote.
Right.
And I wrote this poem in 2002. The story goes, I was in the American Legion up in Oxford, where I was a past commander, and a friend of mine came over to me and said, Bob, I want to get into the Chippewa Dam to take a picture of an eagle. Well, this is the picture here. This is the actual picture he took, and his name was Carl Tribus.
Wow.
And that's a baby eagle. And this is the poem, but you can't really see it here, that I wrote in 2002. And when I came down here in 2005, it must have been about 2006, 2007, I heard about Lone Oak Cemetery. And there were eagles there.
Right.
And there still are eagles there. So I have this is a photo I took. This is a photo I took at Lone Oak Cemetery, and there's the poem.
Oh.
Goes, like young eagles that leave the nest, we in America send our very best to ensure our freedom and way of life, leaving home and family as they take to flight. We pray for their safe return so that they may rest in the land where the eagles nest. Franklin is resting in the land where the eagles nest.
Photo and poem by Bob Peters.
Yeah.
I'm telling you what, that is fantastic. Beautiful job. Beautiful
Well-
job on the poem and the photo.
Yeah, it was, it was funny when I came down here. I mean, that little poem, by the way, is on a monument up in Connecticut. They wanted All Veterans Memorial, I helped put on, was the chairman of, and they wanted that poem. And it's a little park in front of the town hall in Oxford, and it's an all veterans, no names. So that poem is there, but my name is not. I was the chairman to put the thing in, but I said, well, listen, we made a deal that is no name, so my name is not on there. But that poem also raised a lot of money for Rocky Hill Veterans Home and
I
Hospital.
bet it did.
And it's on that monument, and that monument has an eagle with its wingtip touching the mountain. And it was made by a Native American Vietnam veteran named Wally Shoup. So that's pretty much all about America as you can get, right?
That's getting in there.
But when I heard
That's
about your uncle coming home, and I was thinking back, geez, back in 2002 I wrote this, and I hope the family will like it.
I do. I like it very well.
So
That is nice. That's going to go up in a very important place. And that's pretty well a lot. Now I can tell you some more about the service if you want to hear some more about the service.
Sure.
It was an amazing service. Like I was explaining earlier, we had the bagpipes, which were very nice. The folding of the flag was just outstanding. I made a change in the funeral service actually, and I have a hard time even talking about it. But I was in the Navy Reserve, whatever. My daughter was in Marine Corps. Her husband, Marine Corps. Well, my grandson is serving in the Coast Guard right now, and the deal was that protocol that the next of kin gets that folded flag from the casket.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting ready that Sunday morning. I said, no, it needs to go to whoever is serving in our family right now, and that would be Connor. So I went into the funeral home Sunday morning. And I said, Tony, Mark, I got to change the plans here. You can't do that.
We got it all worked out.
We got it all worked out. And I said, look, Connor Burks is the youngest serving member of this family. He needs to get that flag for motivation, for patriotism, whatever. We call it numerous things. And so he looked at me and he goes, well, you are the director. He says, we're going to do what makes you happy. So they that honor guard did a great job of doing that. And
they fired volleys there too.
They did 21 gun salute. We had an F-15 fighter jet flyover. Air Force. I just could hug every one of them. And Tony Camus had some contacts that put us right in line with that. Those are very hard to get and very, very difficult to set up. And the corridors there were tight with airspace. Air Force handled it beautifully. And on top of that, when they came off of our flyover and banked around to the west, they flew over the Eisenhower Center in the Villages, and they thought they were getting a free flyover too. So it was just all fantastic.
Yeah, that's a great place, the Eisenhower Center. A lot of history there too.
It is. And the motorcycles, the honor guard group, the honor flight group from the Villages and their Corvettes. It was spectacular. They all did a good job. 168 honor guard motorcycles. Can you believe that?
I can believe it because I know a lot of them. I know especially the Patriot Guard Riders. We've worked with them quite a bit. And, that's quite an organization.
And I wanted an Army chaplain to do his service. And they said, all right, we'll do that. So we got a volunteer Army chaplain. Lieutenant Colonel Lance Sellon came down from Jacksonville and did the service. And he did a beautiful job. And my 6'4" new Coast Guard guy, get that flag right there. Yeah. But there you go. Lock up.
Okay, brother. Well, I think we pretty much covered it. Like I said, I'm very happy for you and your family, and I'm very happy for Franklin to be home. And when I just try to tell the kids out there, when you see the MIA POW, it doesn't mean me a POW. It's missing in action prisoners of war. And
Yep.
when you go into a facility such as this one here, we have a chair right here. It says MIA POW. Do not sit in it because that's there for when they all come home. And we got one home.
Got one home. Thank you, sir.
And we're going to say goodbye because both of us are getting emotional here,
it's overwhelming.
It is. But anyway, you ready? We're going to give our final salute
Yes,
here
sir.
to the show, right? To all our veterans out there, active military and their families, for all you do. Till next time.